it was a difficult week somewhat, but I ended the week feeling spiritually renewed and happy. And I'll share a little testimony with you to explain why. Well, my entire household is down with the flu, so it was a struggle to get through the week. But something happened to lift my spirits and to encourage me. I am not a person who has a lot of success with planting stuff. I don't have a green thumb. But where I live now, I tried my luck, planted a few things, and to my delight, all of them came to fruition, and they're growing quite nicely. I was very proud of seeing that. But at the moment, in Jamaica and in the Caribbean, we are having what they say is one of the worst droughts in years. So no rain has been falling, at least not where I am. And I saw that my plants started to dry up, which was very distressing to me. So on Tuesday, I went outside and I said, are you all seeing me? Okay, all right. On Tuesday, I went outside. I saw that everything looked so parched and dry. I said, what I need is some rain. The thought occurred to me, why not ask the Lord for a little rain? I said to myself, that being a bit presumptuous. The weather forecasters say that from now until September, we have about a 40% chance of rain. Is it reasonable for me to ask the Lord to intervene in the weather and nature itself on my behalf? That seems a bit presumptuous. The thought came to me, isn't that what being a child of God is about? Doesn't that mean you have privileges that others don't have? So I said, all right. I said, Lord, I'm asking you for some rain today. I'm asking you for some rain to water my plants. And I'm asking you to send it between 5 o'clock and 6 o'clock because I understand that that's the best time to water the plants when the sun goes down. It's not so hot. I said, in addition, I'm asking you for some rain for my sister because she also plants a lot of stuff. I sat down for the whole day and I watched the sun scorching everything outside. It was blazing hot. And at minutes to 5, the sky was as blue and as clear as ever could be. I said, well, the Lord knows best, maybe it was a bit too much for me to expect him to change the weather on my behalf. At about 5:30, I was sitting inside and I heard a torrent come down on the roof. I said, can this be? When I went and looked through the window, all my plants were being showered with rain. For a few seconds, I said, well, maybe this is a coincidence. I couldn't believe that God would do something like that because I asked him. I ran and I jumped on my phone. I messaged my sister. I said, are you having rain? In a few minutes, she messaged back. Yes, the rain started at 5:30. So both of us got the rain I asked for. And some people might look at something like that and they would say, well, maybe it's a coincidence. Maybe it just happened. Nobody can tell me that. Nobody can tell me that that was a coincidence. I believe that the Lord answers the prayers of his children. We have privileges with him that others don't have. And I'll be quick to add that no rain has fallen since. No rain has fallen since. So I believe that he answered my prayer specifically by sending that rain. And so, even though I wasn't well physically, I was very encouraged and buoyed by that experience. It is a wonderful thing to be a Christian, and only those of you on the platform who are his can understand what I'm saying. So I begin by sharing that testimony. Let me just invite the Lord's presence with us. Father, I ask that everything that is said and done here this morning will be done to your honor and glory. Let your spirit be with us and bless us. In Jesus' name, amen. I'm going to entitle my presentation this morning, The Father's only commandment. The Father's only commandment. And some of the thoughts I'm going to share this morning, I've shared them already. But repetition is reinforcement. So please bear with me. There are two verses in the Bible. There are several verses in the Bible, but I'm going to focus on these two. And these two verses, when I read them, sometimes I ask myself the question, how is this going to be possible? One of those is found in Habakkuk chapter 2 and verse 14. It says, "For the earth shall be filled with the knowledge of the glory of the Lord, as the waters cover the sea." In Matthew chapter 24 and verse 14, it says something similar. Jesus says, "And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached into all the world for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come." I read these verses and I say to myself that in order for this to happen, it must mean that something dramatic, something miraculous is going to take place. In order for the whole world to hear the gospel as we believe it, it must take something miraculous. Because today there are over 4,000 religions in the world. Over 4,000. And every last one of them believes that they are the right one and that they have the truth. The country with the largest population in the world today is China. China has 1.4 billion people. And the most popular religion in China is Buddhism. Second on the list with 1.4 billion people again is India. 9 out of every 10 Indian is a Hindu. The Middle East is full of Muslims. And in fact, they say that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. So all of these religions believe with all their heart that they have the truth. And in fact, many they are willing to die for what they believe in. Many of them have given their own lives, especially in Islam, because they believe they have the truth. We say we have the truth. And I think that when I think about it, you know what separates me from them? Circumstances. I was fortunate enough to be born into a society where Christianity is the accepted religion. If I had been born in India or China, there would have been every chance that I would have been a Buddhist or a Hindu. Thank God I was born in a place where I could be exposed to the truth. But they are born into this and they are taught with every fiber of their being that this is the truth. So what makes me think that what I have is the right thing? What makes me think that? Well, in order to answer that question, I want to ask two fundamental questions to begin with. And if we can answer those questions, then we will have the answer to the first question. The first question is, if I were to ask you this morning, what is the greatest, most dangerous problem that exists on the earth today? Some people might tell me that it's racial injustice. Some might say it's poverty. Some might say it's crime and violence. I'm sure all of you on the platform this morning would agree with me unanimously. The greatest issue that exists on this planet is the problem of sin. Everything that is bad that happens in this world is as a result of sin. And so, salt, any religion that is worth carrying to the entire world must be able to answer the second fundamental question, which is, if sin is the greatest problem in the world, what is the answer? What is the answer? And if you find something that can answer that question, then you have found the gospel that must be taken to the entire world. So what I'm going to do this morning is spend a little time looking at the answers that others give, others who are willing to give their lives for what they believe in and who are steeped in what they believe in. I want to look at the answer that they give to this question, as opposed to what I call our gospel. Now, one of the things that I've found in my research is that almost every religion Almost everyone, if not all of them follow the same pattern. They begin in the same way. There's a holy man who they hold in high esteem, and this holy man is giving messages from God, and he comes and tells the people what they should do in order to overcome this problem of sin. All of them follow the same blueprint, right? For example, the man who started Buddhism was a man named Siddhartha Gautama. Buddhists consider him to be the greatest man that ever walked the face of the earth. And I look at some of the reasons why they consider Buddha to be so great. They say that one of the reasons he's so great is because he was both an intellectual and he was compassionate. Another reason is that in spite of his grandeur, they say that when he was on earth, he was a prince. In spite of his grandeur, he never recognized any god to rule over us. He focused only on love and humanity. Another thing that made him so great is because that he thought that compassion was the quickest way to enlightenment. I used to think that Buddha was the person they worshipped, but it turns out they don't worship him. They just esteem him as the greatest man to ever walk the earth. So what is Buddha's solution to the sin problem? What does he teach his followers? His followers who fill China and other parts of the world. What is his answer to sin? Well, here is what Buddha says. He says, we are the cause of our own suffering, and we have the power to end it. So everything you see bad that is happening around us, according to Buddha, is caused by us. Right? To some extent, I agree with that. Man is the problem on earth. But he follows up by saying, we have the power to end it. Really, Buddha? How? Well, he gives 8 steps, and if you follow these 8 steps, you will be victorious. The 8 steps are that you must have right understanding, you must have right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So Buddha's answer to sin and the Buddhist answer to sin is that if you can teach yourself to think the right things and to do the right things and to concentrate on the right things and to say the right things, etc., you will solve all the problems that are happening around the world. It sounds like a very difficult and tedious task to me. 8 things that you have to do, and you have to do it. This is Buddha's answer to sin. It doesn't sound to me like this is the gospel that needs to be preached to the entire world. This is not the glory of God that needs to cover the entire world. What it's telling me is that I need to do the impossible. I need to do the impossible, and I can accomplish it myself. It's the same thing with Islam. In all my searching, I think Islam is the most rigid, the most legalistic. It is the most demanding and the hardest of all religions, if I'm to be honest. I mean, let me show you what I'm talking about. Islam, of course, was founded by Muhammad. And if you think Buddha is revered by the Buddhists, Muhammad is even more so. They say that Muhammad was the greatest prophet who ever lived. And what Muslims do, what Islam is all about, is following the words of Allah and emulating Muhammad. So if Muhammad used to eat apples at 5 o'clock every Monday, Muslims try to do the same thing. If Muhammad, you know why Muslims keep a long beard? Because they say Muhammad used to do it. So the religion is, if you can emulate Muhammad, then you are on your way to overcoming. You're on your way to overcoming. And Muhammad gave hundreds of rules and laws that governs everything. And when I say everything, I mean, he tells you how to walk, how to eat, how to sleep, how to... Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. This is the the Muslim sleep ritual, right? It says that you should try to sleep in a state of purity. You must dust your bed 3 times before you go to sleep. Not 2 times, 3 times. When you go into the bed, you must lie down on your right side. And you must put your right hand under your right cheek and recite, "O Allah, in thy name I live and die." And then before you sleep, you must recite the two last verses of the surah. Right? That they have a ritual that you must follow in how you sleep. This will help you to overcome sin. They have another one which I read on the platform before. They have a defecation ritual. Right? When you are going into the bathroom to defecate, you must enter the bathroom with your left foot first. That is the first thing. You have to say a certain prayer before you start using the toilet. While you're on the toilet, there are two other prayers that you should recite. It says that after defecating, I'm sorry to be so graphic, right? But I'm just stating the facts as they are. It says after you're finished your business, the anus must be washed with water. They don't believe in using tissue. Using the left hand. It is sinful to use the right hand. You must use the left hand. And if water is unavailable, you must clean yourself using smooth stones. But not just any amount of smooth stones. It has to be an odd number. If you use 4, it's a sin. It has to be an odd number. Otherwise, God will be offended. Otherwise, you're sinning. For the women, it says when women are having their monthly issue, they must maintain proper hygiene and they are not allowed to pray. During those days when they are sick, they are not allowed to pray. It's sin. They should wash themselves using only the left hand. And I'm thinking, man, how awkward. If you are right-handed, you must dread these moments when you have to use the toilet or you have your, ladies' issues. It must be dreadful for you if you are a right-handed person. You have to use the left hand. And why is that? Because Muslims believe that the left hand is used to clean bodily excrements and it is viewed as unclean. But this hand that I'm using to gesticulate now, it's unclean naturally. The right hand is the clean hand, and it is used for shaking hands, etc. This is the answer for overcoming sin. Muslims pray 5 times per day, 5 times per day. If you pray 4 times, it's a sin. Now, before you pray, there's a ritual that you have to perform. Each of the 5 times, you have to wash yourself, because if you come before Allah unclean, you're sinning. Here is the order in which you have to wash your hands. Wash yourself, sorry. Before you pray, you have to first wash your hands, then your mouth, then your nose, then your face, then your hair, then your ears, and finally, you wash the ankles and the feet. If you mess up the order, you're sinning. This is Muhammad's answer to how you solve sin, right? You have to be careful how you defecate, how you sleep, how you menstruate. And there are many more that I could read. Every aspect of your life, you must be rigid and legalistic and watch which foot you use first and which hand you use. And God is watching all those things. And if you can be faithful enough and disciplined enough and vigilant enough to make sure that you don't sleep on your left side and you sleep on the right, and that you don't put your left hand under your head but you put the right, if you can be vigilant in all of these things, then you can overcome sin. Is that the gospel that needs to be preached to the whole world? Is that the glory that needs to fill the whole earth? Boy, I hope not. Because I would rather die than live like that. I would rather die than live like that, I'm telling you. And to my surprise, this kind of living appeals to people because they say that Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world. I think about it and I know in my heart that this can't be it. What about Hinduism? They say that 9 out of every 10 Indian is a Hindu. And India is 1.4 billion people, so that's massive amounts of people. Now, Hinduism has no particular founder, right? They have a lot of gurus and avatars and holy men. But what is the fundamental teaching of Hinduism? What is it? It is that all beings and all things are really, in their deepest essence, a pure or divine spirit, full of peace, full of joy and wisdom. So while we Christians teach that we are born filthy, we're born in sin, we're born corrupt, Hinduism teaches the opposite. They say that at the core of all of us, including serial killers like Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer, all of us are really pure inside and righteous inside. Now, what did they say? Anyone who takes the trouble to undergo the necessary training to purify and refine the mind can begin to feel the fruit of this. You get what they are saying? So all of us are good people. All of us are righteous and pure inside. What we need to do is to purify our own minds to come to the recognition of this truth. And how can you do this? This training can take various forms and is known as yoga. It's known as yoga. So how could Ted Bundy and Jeffrey Dahmer and these vicious killers and murderers and rapists, how could they change their behavior? Through yoga and meditation, because we're all good inside. You just need to train yourself the right way. You have to do the work. You have to make the effort. And if you can be disciplined enough and meditate long enough and hard enough, you can make yourself become good. And when I thought about it, I thought to myself, no wonder these people teach reincarnation. Because in order for you to accomplish that on your own, to kill your sin nature and become pure, that would take several hundred lifetimes. So no wonder they believe that you are born and you die and you are born again. And each time you have to improve a little on yourself. This is their answer to sin. You have to train yourself to become good. Absolutely ridiculous. And there are many more that I could highlight, but as I said, it's a theme in all the religions. The holy men come, they are the head and the ultimate authority in the religion, and they tell you what you should do to make yourself pure, what actions you need to take to make yourself righteous, this step, that is it. Right? All of them. The man who founded Jainism, a man named Rishabhadeva, what did he teach? He taught that the path to enlightenment must come through non-violence and reducing harm to living things, including plants and animals. That is the path to salvation, living peacefully with all things. Guru Nanak, the founder of Sikhism, what is his remedy for overcoming sin? Well, the devotee should exercise control over their own mind and body. You must exercise control over yourself. You must strive to walk on the spiritual path, and you must use your reason when you have problems. Not somebody telling you what to do or somebody helping you. You must use your own reason. You must fear no one, and you must constantly and ceaselessly repeat the divine name. So you will see Sikhs walking around and they are constantly talking, because they are saying the name of God over and over and over and over again. Because they believe that this is helping them to overcome sin just by saying the name. All of these religions, the same pattern, the same approach. Now, I found it interesting that God started the true religion using the same approach. He used the same approach, right? When God told Moses that he was to go to the Egyptians, to Pharaoh, to free the Israelites, you know what God said? He said, I'm going to make you a God to Pharaoh. And that is exactly what happened. Moses was viewed as a god, not just by the Egyptians. He was viewed as a god by the Israelites. He was viewed as a god by the Israelites, right? Moses, in fact, I realized that Judaism in its initial stages was very much like Islam. Moses told the people how to defecate, what to do during their menstrual cycle, how to eat, what to wear. Every aspect of their lives was governed and dictated by what Moses said. Moses gave the Israelites the moral laws. He gave them the civil laws. He gave them their health laws, and he gave them their ceremonial laws. Four different laws he gave them. Every aspect of the life of a Jew was determined by what Moses said. He became the greatest voice in Israel. In fact, to even speak against Moses was a crime. It was a crime. One time his own sister and brother got up and started complaining against the position that Moses held in Israel. And you know what God did? He struck Miriam with leprosy because she said something against Moses. To speak against Moses was to speak against God. And I mean, it was more than that, right? God did these things to teach lessons because Moses was actually a type of Jesus Christ. We can look at that another time. He was a type of Jesus. But to even speak against Moses was a crime. Nobody dared to question his words. He became a household name. Everything that happened in Israel was done upon the basis of what Moses said. If you had a dispute in a Jewish household, all you needed to do to settle the dispute was to say, Moses says. And if you said that, nobody could argue with you. His words were immutable, and they were the words of God himself. And the religion of Judaism was founded entirely and completely upon the words and the instructions and the laws of Moses. Hundreds of years passed, but the words of Moses remained as strong as ever. And when Jesus came, it was the same notion and ideology that the children of Israel had. That is why the Pharisees came to Jesus over and over. Over and over they came to him. They said, Moses says this, or Moses says that. What do you say? Because if they could get him to speak against, if he spoke against Jeremiah or Hosea, it would be a blasphemy in their eyes, but it wouldn't be so great as to speak against Moses, the ultimate authority in Israel. So many times they tried to get Jesus to contradict Moses so that they could say, aha, see, he has committed the ultimate blasphemy. Moses was to Israel, as Muhammad was to Islam, a man next to God. And so it was against this backdrop and in this context that something happened in the book of Matthew, which I want to highlight. The very disciples of Jesus thought that Moses was the greatest thing that ever walked this earth. So look at what happens here in Matthew chapter 17. I'm going to read a few verses starting at verse 1. It says, and after 6 days, Jesus taketh Peter, James, and John, his brother, and bringeth them up into an high mountain apart, and was transfigured before them, and his face did shine as the sun, and his raiment was white as the light. And behold, there appeared unto them, Moses and Elias talking with him. Can you imagine? The disciples are there watching this scenario, and their master, who they fraternize with every day and who they are used to, is standing there. And all of a sudden, beside him appear the two men who Israel holds as gods, the two mightiest prophets of the Old Testament, the two men whose authority they believe is unquestionable. They appear with Jesus. And the disciples think, man, we knew that Jesus was a righteous man. We knew that he was a great prophet. We knew that he was a messenger of God. But you know what? We didn't realize that he was such a great prophet that he could fraternize with this level of company. They were happy for him. They thought that it was an honor for Jesus to be able to interact with these two great men. They thought that, wow, He's in great company now. He's rubbing shoulders with the big dogs. We're proud of our master. You know what we're going to do? Mr. Chatty Chatty Peter, who could never keep his trap shut. I mean, he meant well, but he was always the first to open his mouth and make some grand suggestion. He jumps up, and in ignorance and in grave error, he suggests that they make 3 tabernacles, 3 temples. Let me read it in verse 4. Then answered Peter and said unto Jesus, Lord, it is good for us to be here. What he's saying to Jesus, man, you are lucky to be here, man. You are in great company, right? You should feel special. You should feel proud of yourself because you are here fraternizing with these 2 men, these great prophets. Let us make here 3 tabernacles, one for thee and one for Moses and one for Elijah. Peter thought he was doing something good. He thought he was helping out Jesus. He thought he was doing something that was beneficial for his master and acting on the behalf of his master. It's a mistake that men have made for generations and continue to make. They believed, and the apostles believed, that Jesus was equivalent and on the same level as Moses and Elijah. A great error, a grave mistake, and it needed to be corrected once and for all eternity. And in that moment, something happened that was, I would say, it was cataclysmic. It was life-changing. It was something that had universal significance. It was something that caused every angel and watcher and holy one to stop what they were doing and take notice. Something that was historic and great. God the Father, the mightiest being in the universe, the one whose words are unquestionable, unimpeachable, and unchangeable, the one whose words cause worlds and planets into existence, and who upholds everything that exists by the power of his mouth. This being, for only the 2nd time in the entire New Testament, you check it out, only 2 times he ever spoke. I'm not counting the book of Revelation because Revelation is symbolic and it's futuristic. Right? But you read the entire New Testament, you will find that there are only 2 times when the Father himself spoke. The other one was when Jesus was being baptized, right? God himself spoke. And I want you to notice that what he comes to say is of such importance. He doesn't send an angel. When Jesus was being born, when Samson was going to be born, he sent an angel to announce his birth to Manoah. When Jesus was going to be born, he sent an angel to tell Mary. He sent angels to announce the news to the shepherd, right? Many times, angels are usually the ones who bring messages to people. In fact, God could have allowed the image of another prophet to appear because Moses and Elijah were not the only ones held in high esteem. He could have caused Isaiah to appear or Abraham. Abraham in their eyes was considered just as great as Moses, or maybe almost. God could have used any of these mediums to bring the message that he was about to bring. But what he was about to say was of such importance. It was of such magnitude. It was something that he wanted the universe to know that would stand forever. Because when God speaks, nobody can question it. Nobody can say there's ambiguity. Nobody can wonder if it is true or not. What he came to say, he had to say it himself. Because it is the truth of the ages. God the Father spoke. And what did he say? What was so important that he needed to say it himself? To do something that he only did once before. What was so important? Look at the words that came out of his mouth next. In verse 5, it says, while Peter yet spake, while he was still uttering this foolishness, this folly, this ignorance, this great falsehood, behold, a bright cloud overshadowed them. And behold, a voice out of the cloud which said, this is my beloved Son, in whom I am well pleased. The entire Jewish nation and the disciples themselves had made a great error. This was not a common little prophet like Moses or Elijah. This was not a holy man like Muhammad or an ascetic like Buddha or a hermit like Guru Nanak. This was not a normal man to be compared to anybody else. This little Galilean standing there in front of them was the Son of God. He was equal to God. And from that day forward, never, ever, ever should anyone ever again make the mistake of comparing any man, any prophet, any great guru to him. This was not a normal man. This was my son. And God added the part that was, he added an important part. He said, in whom I am well pleased. In other words, everything that this man says, everything that he does, all that he entails, I, God the Father, the greatest being in the universe, I sanction it, I back it. It is done with my authority and my approval. This is my son. Never compare or believe that Moses and Elijah or any man is in the same category as he is. These were the words of God himself. And you know, in another place, Jesus asked his disciples, who do men say that I am? Guess who answered first? Right? The one who could never keep his mouth shut. Peter says, some say you're Elijah, some say you're Moses. Jesus says, who do you say that I am? Peter, I say that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. You know what Jesus said? Jesus said this truth is the most important truth that exists on this earth. And on this truth, upon this rock will I build my church. Upon the truth that I am the Son of God. This is the foundation upon which the entire church is to be established. It is a truth that when it is properly understood, the gates of hell cannot prevail against those who believe it. Because you see, when we understand what the full implication is of Jesus being the Son of God, we will understand why it is so important to believe this. It is impossible. We have been over this many times, right? But I'll still say it. It is impossible to appreciate the love of God if you don't understand that Jesus was the Son of God. It is impossible. I can say I love all of you on this platform this morning. I see 101 people. I can say I love all of you. And in order to prove my love, I'm going to sacrifice Brother Matt for you. All of you would have reason to question my love if that is what I did. All of you would have reason to question it and to doubt it. Do you think that it is the same thing if I take my little 2-year-old son, Zane, the one I love more than myself? Do you think it is the same thing if I take him and I sacrifice him for all of you? Some of you I have never even met in my life. I sacrifice him for you. You think that's the same thing? Absolutely not. In this was manifested the love of God to us in the gift that he gave. That is why John 3:16, as much as it is a verse that we recite carelessly without thinking about it, because we have heard it so many times. That is why it is one of the greatest verses in the Bible. Because it says if you want to know how much God loves you, if you want to know what you mean to God, look at the gift that he gave. Look at the magnitude of the gift that he gave, right? Look at whether he sent Brother Matt, a colleague and a co-worker, or he sent his son, the one he loved more than life itself. The understanding of how much God loves us can only come in the understanding that Jesus is the Son of God. The same thing goes for the kind of person that God is. How can I know what the character of God is like? How do I know that when Jesus took up little 5-year-olds and kissed them, and when he fraternized with filthy whores and touched stinking lepers, and showed love and mercy and peace everywhere he went? How do I know that this is what God the Father is like? What's the guarantee? The guarantee is that he is the Father's Son. And as such, he's of the very nature and the very substance of the Father. He's the express image of the Father. He is the image of the invisible God. And so we behold the glory of the Father shining in the face of his Son. We look at the character of his Son and we see the Father. If you don't understand the truth that God came to give those apostles on that mountain, that Jesus is really the Son of God, then you will follow Muhammad. You will try to emulate Muhammad. You will believe everything that Buddha says, because you don't understand the character of the Son, of the Father, unless you know who the Son was. So this was part one of the most fundamental truth in all of Christendom. This was part one. But the Father didn't stop there. I want you to look at the next thing that he says. In the Old Testament, God gave hundreds of commandments. Some of them, I'm not sure whether it was the Son speaking or whether it was the Father speaking. It doesn't matter, because it's one and the same, right? But in the New Testament, there is one commandment and only one, which comes from the mouth of God the Father. Only one. And for 2,000 years, he has given only one commandment. And I'm saying to you, if God the Father gives a commandment, then every being in the universe should sit up and take note of what that commandment is, because that commandment is life itself. And everything hinges on that commandment. What was the commandment? The next three words of the verse tells you. We're still at verse 5. After declaring that Jesus was his beloved Son, what does he say next? Hear ye him. If you were to ask me to summarize salvation in 3 words, that's it right there. Salvation means hear ye him. End of story. The only commandment the Father ever gave in the New Testament. The only one. And it is the commandment that is the key to happiness. It is the key to universal reconciliation and victory over sin. That is the key, that one commandment. Hear ye him. For 6,000 years, men have heard other men. They have heard rules and laws and regulations. They have heard Muhammad, they have heard Buddha, they have heard Guru Nanak, they have heard Moses, they have heard Ellen White, they have heard the General Conference, they have heard the Watchtower. God the Father was making it clear in that moment. All of these things are finished. No longer do you listen to men and listen to prophets and listen to holy people. No longer do you follow laws and statutes and be mindful of how you defecate and how you sleep, and be mindful of yoga and meditation and whatever else. The crux of salvation is given in these 3 words. Hear ye him. And that's it. Period. Now, implicit in this commandment is, of course, an understanding that before you can hear him, you must first know him. Right? I'm not just saying you're going to just get up and start listening to Jesus. You must first know him. You must develop a relationship with him, because that is what salvation is. It's developing a relationship with somebody. But you know, the minute that you meet him and you start to get to know him, you know what starts to happen? You start to fall in love with him. And the words that he speaks to you start becoming the joy of your daily life to listen to. And Jesus himself said the same thing. Jesus says, if a man love me, to know him is to love him. If a man love me, he will do what? He will keep my words. He will do what the Father says, and he will hear me. And when you keep those words, when you hear that voice and you keep those words, your problem is finished. I mean, when he says he will keep my words, he's not talking about how Muslims keep the words of Muhammad and sleep only on their right side with their right hand at a certain place and use only their left hand to wash. He's not talking about not eating pork. He's not talking about eating creatures with scales and not eating creatures with that without cloven hoofs or whatever. He's not talking about listening to commandments and instructions. This is what men have done for ages. Because he is the wonderful counselor who lives on the inside. He's the one who does something that Buddha cannot do and Rishabhadeva cannot do. He comes to live on the inside, and on the inside is where he speaks to his people. He is the voice that you hear every day telling you, don't eat that piece of food because it's not healthy for you. Don't go to that place today because it's dangerous. Go and call this brother or sister because they need some encouragement. He is the voice you hear every day. He is the voice that you hear in your ear saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And when the Father gives the commandment to hear him, this is the level on which he's speaking. To listen to that voice that you hear speaking to you every day. To listen to the one who you have developed and built a relationship with, who you trust more than life itself. So if he says to you, take your son that you love and go and kill him, you obey in a heartbeat because you realize that life and salvation and happiness depends upon hearing him. This is the gospel in 3 words. It's the gospel in 1 sentence. And it was spoken out of the mouth of the one who cannot be questioned or second guessed. You know, there's a reason why God the Father said these words himself. He didn't trust, not that he didn't trust, but it was too important for anybody else to say it. So he came and said it himself. So I go back to the first question that I asked at the beginning of my presentation. Why do I believe that what 4,000 plus religions have is not the gospel? And why do I believe that what we say is the gospel is what needs to be spread to all the world? Why is that? Well, in summary, what they tell me is that God looks down and he sees that we are in trouble. And you know what he does? In an attempt to help me, he sends holy men to give me laws and rules and instructions and to tell me that I don't need any help. What I need to do is to be disciplined, work harder, try harder. Some of them say that I need to understand that I am already good within myself and all I need to do is to train myself to bring out this goodness. All of them tell me that in order to overcome the sin problem, I have to make greater effort. I have to be the one to do something about it. I have to save myself. I have to step up to the plate, right? And if I am disciplined, if I am more disciplined than Brother Matt, if I study harder than Brother Matt, if I enter the bathroom with my right foot while he continues to enter with his left, or vice versa, if I continue to sleep on my right side and he makes the mistake of sleeping on his left, then I, by my own efforts, can eventually and gradually and slowly and painfully save myself. That is what they say. And that is what millions and millions of people all over the world believe. I have to save myself. You know what our gospel says? You know what my gospel says? God looked down on earth and he saw that we were in a desperate hole that we couldn't get out of. So you know what he did? He came down himself. He didn't send a holy man or a holy prophet to tell me instructions. He came himself. He became like me. He rolled up his sleeves. He became like me. And the enemy that I could not defeat, he defeated it for me. He did it for me. And he never asked me to do anything except accept what he did as a free gift. Free. I don't have to do anything to get the gift. I don't have to meditate every day and do yoga to get the gift. I don't have to be careful how I walk and how I wash myself to get the gift, or to live at peace with all things and follow 8 paths to get the gift. He gives it freely because he recognized that I couldn't do it myself. Now that is a romantic story. A God who came down and mixed with the scum of the universe and lifted them out himself because he realized that they couldn't help themselves. And when he was finished doing that, he then came to live inside of them because he wanted to always be with them and to have a relationship with them because he wants them and he wants to be their father and their friend. That is a beautiful story. That is salvation. When God weighed my life against the life of his son, I want you to think about this. When God weighed my life against the life of his son, you know what he concluded? He concluded that I am just as important to him as his son. Think about what I just said. When God weighed my life against the life of Jesus, he concluded that my life was just as important to him as the life of his son. That's profound, and it almost seems ridiculous for me to say, but it is true, because he gave his son to die for me. I'll go further than that. When God weighed my life against his life, he concluded that my life was more precious to him than his own life. Think about that. He concluded that my life was more precious to him than his own life. He chose to blot himself out of existence rather than to allow me to die. That is the gospel that needs to be preached into every nation. That is what these people who are so legalistic and lost and struggling and fighting need to hear, because it's the only thing that can save them. This is the glory of God that needs to cover the entire world like the waters cover the sea. The story of a God who loved us so much that he came himself to take us in his arms and lift us out of the mud. This is the everlasting gospel that needs to be preached to the entire world. And I'll summarize it by saying this. Other religions say that if you're disciplined and determined and committed enough, you can change yourself. Jesus says, you don't have to do anything. I will give you new life. Others say if you work and work and work, one day you will be able to rescue yourself. Jesus says, rest and I will rescue you. They say that if you make enough effort, you can one day reach the level that you're fit to be saved. Jesus says, accept me into your life and you are saved already. It's as simple as that and as easy as that. So I don't need to second guess what is the gospel that needs to be preached to all the world. I don't need to second guess what is the glory of God that needs to cover the world like the waters cover the sea. There's no story more beautiful than this. There's no salvation that is greater than this. That a God takes it and gives it to you freely because he loves you. And this is why I am a Christian today. I believe that if I was born in India or China, and I was a Buddhist or a Hindu, and I heard this gospel, I believe that it would move my heart and it would change me and I would come to the truth. The truth that salvation and happiness can only be found when we obey the Father's last commandment, the Father's only commandment, and hear him. Hear him. So this is where I'm going to stop this morning, brothers and sisters. My time is up. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that these thoughts will help to encourage you and to remind all of us that in our day-to-day lives, Walking with him and listening to him is the only thing that matters. It's the only thing that matters. And when we have that and we do that, everything else is finished and it is done. And we are free. So thank you and God bless you. I'm going to close the session in prayer so that we can join the brethren who are at the chapel.